Coming up next here at the Mike Burkus Memorial Stage, I have got a panel for you guys.
I do have to
I've got 4 gentlemen from Sports Collectors Digest, which is the hobby's oldest and largest publication. On this panel are the editor-in-chief, Jeff Owens, and 3 of their most acclaimed writers, John Newman, Greg Bates, and Clemente Lisi. These guys are going to talk about everything that's good in this hobby. No bad stuff. All right, gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you. I don't know about the acclaim. I don't know if I belong in that conversation, but I'll take it. I slipped them a 10 to include me. So, happy to be on this panel. Happy to write for Sports Collectors Digest. I'm the host of Sports Card Nation. Shameless plug there as well. And like he just said, it's the longest print publication in the hobby, and that in this great hobby, there's something to be said about that. So I'll let each gentleman up here sort of introduce themselves. We'll finish with Jeff, who will also tell you a little bit more about SCD as well. So I don't know if Greg, you want to go next.
I'll start. Very excited to be here. Very happy that SCD is here again. As John said, we're the oldest print publication in the hobby. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary in 2023. So 53 years we've been doing this as a print publication, and now we're digital with a website and all sorts of other products. But it's really exciting to be here. I think we've probably been at every national in some form or fashion for 46 years. So it's really exciting and a source of pride for me for us to still have a solid place in the hobby and to be at this great show. You see our magazines floating around the convention center. I hope everybody will pick one up and take a look at it and see what we're doing. But really happy to still be a part of the hobby and still publishing a magazine in these days, which is a little bit rare. But we're still here and glad to be here and really thankful and grateful for all the subscribers we have and the people that follow us. So glad to have my writers here today, and I'll let you guys. Greg?
I'm Greg. I've freelanced for SCD for a little over 13 years, so worked on a bunch of stories, have a lot of cool connections. The hobby is enormous, but it's small at the same time, even though we're getting huge here. And it's great to tell the stories that people love to hear. We like to give them different things than just the ordinary that you're going to get everywhere else. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to write for this great magazine that we can still put out.
My name is Clemente Lisi. I've been writing for SCD for 4 years now. I write about all sports, but I specialize in soccer and hockey, which I should admit this year I've had a huge uplift with the Olympics and the World Cup, so I've been lucky.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, guys, let's start up. Obviously, we report on the news of the hobby. It seems like every year the stories get bigger and bigger. I thought it'd be interesting to sort of go around, with the panel here and give our opinion, like to each of us, what the biggest hobby story might be. We can start. Mine, I think, what's going on in the grading space, right, with Collectors, PSA's parent company, now owning, 3 of the 4 major grading card companies. A lot of people saying, monopoly and that the government should look into it. And then we can get into turnaround times. So, if you sub today, you might see it in 2027 graded. So I think to me, that's been like the big story of the year. And the grading is just such a huge part of the hobby. So anything that affects it, I think that's a big story. It's the stuff I get asked about probably the most.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. Certainly, you have a lot of companies these days merging and partnering and doing all these different deals together, and I think that's driving the hobby a little bit too. to me, probably the biggest story in the last year, I think, was the Kevin O'Leary purchase of the Jordan Kobe Bryant card. And I think that's something that's driving the hobby right now. You're getting a lot of wealthy investors now in the hobby buying up cards as assets, and that was a big one. Very prominent investor in all sorts of investments around the country. And he buys a Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan card for $12.9 million to break the record. I just think that was a huge deal. And again, I think it's bringing wealthy investors like that into the hobby. You know, there's good and bad. You know, there's some that don't like that, but it really helps drive sales, I think, and it raises the exposure of the hobby. You see him at card shows now with the chain around his neck and the card there. He was at Fanatics Fest walking around with that. And, you know, some may like that, some don't. It may be a little flashy for some, but again, when you have a guy who's that well known and a very wealthy investor, investing in the hobby, purchasing a card like that, he's purchased other multi-million-dollar cards. I just think that brings a great amount of publicity and exposure, and I think it brings more people into the hobby.
You need one of those chains, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't think that's
with a big,
happen.
the original SCD, like frame. Yeah.
Right.
The graded SCD.
Have an SCD label and have my 1973 Hank Aaron card in there or something like that. That's worth about $10.
For me, I think one of the biggest hobby stories of the year is the increase in popularity of soccer cards and soccer collectibles, because we're fresh off the World Cup, and I think for 5 weeks, my mother-in-law was watching the World Cup, and she doesn't watch any sports. So I think people got into the whole World Cup party atmosphere, but I think people that are interested in collectibles, it puts that sport in front of them. And if you look around the show here, there's a lot of soccer. There's also a competing soccer show happening in Chicago this weekend. And you have collectible items that are in the millions of dollars for soccer that generally were either relegated to just a European market, and now they're in the American market, which is where really the money is. And then on top of that, you have this craze over the Panini stickers, which happens every 4 years, but that's now spilled over into trading cards. And there's some big cards out there that are soccer related, and there's people now going back to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, looking for rookie cards of famous players like Maradona or Pele that are getting sort of a new life, because those things were pretty much abandoned or not even thought about. And this is all post-pandemic, but I think it's really supercharged with the World Cup, and I think it's going to stay for a few years. And I think it's the hobby is so dominated by baseball traditionally, and then football and basketball, but now I do think soccer is a number 4 in that group.
Now you got a whole international section.
You have a whole international section, which I have to check out. I'm sure a lot of it is soccer and Formula One and everything else.
I was going to say, probably find some soccer cards.
Yeah, I would think so.
Over there.
Yeah.
And yeah, the World Cup, like, it's become it's always been a major event, but I think it's gotten even bigger with each incarnation of it. And this year's, I didn't get to be there like you did, Clemente, but watching from my living room, it felt like a Super Bowl with a huge halftime show with big names.
Right.
And just the atmosphere. Even the commercials had like a Super Bowl feel to them. So it's like you said, it's growing, and it's probably not going to slow down anytime soon. What was that? I mean, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but like being there in person, comparing it to me in my living room watching it.
Yeah, being at the World Cup final, and I've been to the last four, so it was fun. I mean, it was a lot closer for me to go to New Jersey from New York than to go to Qatar. But, even FIFA is getting in the collectibles game. Like, for example, they're selling off pieces of the turf from the final for $450. You can get it glass encased. They're selling championship rings that they gave to the players. They created 2,026 of those rings. The first 26 go to the team, and then the remainder will be auctioned off and sold off for $12,000 a piece. So even FIFA, which is an international organization, has figured out, how do you monetize the World Cup final? Like, people love to go to the game if you could afford to go, let's say. But then how do you make money off of that? And the turf was brought in at MetLife Stadium because the Giants and the Jets play there. That turf will go away. And And I think even sports leagues are figuring out how do you monetize every single piece of a World Cup or a Super Bowl or an NBA Finals, because people want to own a piece of that. And it's interesting. And so being there was amazing, but even if you weren't there, you could have some of that come to you now. Or I could buy it and say, I want to remember that memorable game by having this paperweight on my desk. So there's definitely a market for it.
What do you think this kind of impact the World Cup has had on cards? We've seen some valuable card sales at auctions, and you see in auction companies now having soccer-only auctions, which I think is another impact from the World Cup.
Yeah, no, I do think, going back and trying to get that Messi rookie, that Cristiano Ronaldo rookie, and this, because they were printed in Europe, we have no idea on print runs. For all I know, I always joke around that in some warehouse in Spain, there's probably like 10,000 Messi rookies in a box, and how that affects the value, but we don't know. We don't know. But you mentioned grading, and grading is a big part of it, because those cards raw, there's many of them, but then when you grade them and then you turn that raw card into an 8 or a 9, now you're creating value, and people want that. I don't grade personally, but I will buy graded cards because I feel like it's been given the stamp of approval, especially if you're buying on eBay. You want to know it's authentic, at least, right? Not a counterfeit card, like the Gretzky rookie, which has been counterfeited over and over again. So yeah, I do think that the soccer card market, I went to the London Card Show a couple of years ago, wrote a piece for you about it. And I mean, in London, people are really into baseball and basketball and football, but they're into soccer, obviously. And so the hobby shifted in Europe from stickers to cards. So a lot of modern, new cards doing really well, and Panini. And Panini lost the license, the World Cup license, sticker one to Topps Fanatics, right? And that's a big deal. And that story was page one story in the UK, for example.
Wow.
It's a seismic shift where the soccer hobby is becoming less European and more American because of Fanatics, and Panini is losing market share there too.
Yeah.
So
I think by the same token too, the popularity of soccer in other companies is also introducing a lot of sports fans over there to baseball cards and basketball cards and other sports cards.
Yes.
We had a story, it's on our website, and it's going to appear in the next magazine, from a collector in Germany. And he was talking about how baseball cards are becoming very popular over there, and the prices are a whole lot cheaper because the dealers don't yet know how to place them online or how to price them. And then you got shipping challenges. So U.S. collectors can actually go on eBay and check out the German sites and all that and come up with some pretty big bargains. So I think soccer and others, has really lifted the other sports
there's a lot
internationally as well.
There's a lot of crossover, because you also have baseball games being played in Europe. You're having the NFLs played in Europe and Latin America. So there's a lot of, you mentioned the World Cup finals, the live sports component is really still important for then creating collectors from sports fans. That's what the whole Fanatics thing is about, right? How can we take a sea of fans and what percentage can become collectors? And the goal is to 10x the hobby, right? How do you do that? You do that by creating these events, massive events, and then having a collectibles component around it. And I think the leagues are getting involved now. And when I was in London, for example, there are a lot of NFL fans there now.
Yeah.
And that translates into card collectors and signed helmets and all that. How do you get a piece of that?
Yeah.
All right, Greg, what is it to you? You got a different one, or did we
It's not
get
soccer.
It's not soccer. I'm not a soccer guy. Jeff's not a soccer guy.
That's
You
why I'm
have your
here.
own niche
I have
with
my
soccer
own
and a little hockey.
corner. Yeah.
I don't know. I think the craziest thing is after Ohtani went 50-50 and it's the off season and his card prices continue to go up. And that's not normal. That's not what's happened in baseball, right? And a big thing is the prices of the best players, the GOATs and everything, the Jordans, the Bradys, the Roos, everything's just like doubled, it seems like, even since last national. You think about Brady, he's got a couple more years until the Hall of Fame, and you're always going to get that build up, but he got his
You think he
early.
gets in?
Yeah, well, ask Belichick, right? But the buildup on that stuff is just crazy, and the Roos and the Jordans and everything that, well, Jordan could, but that can't hurt their legacy. You know, it's crazy. The prices are just nuts right now.
And you were talking about Ohtani cards. You've got a story in this issue about the Japanese market for Ohtani. His cards are surging right now too and setting records over there. So another example of the hobby becoming more international.
Yeah, and his prices for rookies are so crazy. People went pre-MLB stuff, and then I think it shifted also to his second-year stuff, autographs and everything else. It's a trickle down where people can't afford his rookie stuff, and then they go back to the international, and it's just, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and he has stuff even before he came, stateside.
Japanese league.
BBM, and that stuff is just as crazy. And, I don't think I have to tell anyone how good Ohtani is. I think we all know. But when you really look, like you said, Greg, the 50-50 season, but when you look at his records already, like he's doing stuff, barring like a catastrophic injury, when all is said and done, he's going to be right up there as arguably one of the best players of all time. And that's saying something because there's a lot of competition in that pool. And so it's incredible to see, and vintage right now, and just in general, is crazy. Just walking around the show here in a little over a day plus, just a little sticker shock, which is par for the course. But Ohtani's definitely in that mix too. So
where do you think he ranks right now among hobby stars in terms of the value of his cards? Is he already top 5 or?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, he's doing stuff. We haven't. He's compared to Babe Ruth, right, because of the pitching. He's got better pitching numbers already than Babe Ruth did. Now the hitting's not there yet, but it's on track. It's on track. So, he was on pace. Like he was looking like he might win the Cy Young year this year, and then they shut him down on the pitching side because of an injury. Not an injury, like he's still in the lineup as a hitter. He's just not pitching. But I'd be shocked if he didn't win the Cy Young at some point again, unless they ever decided he's just going to be a one-way player. Which is always could happen. So,
can you imagine if he would have played here and when he was like 19 or 20 and had 3 or 4 more seasons? I mean, his numbers would be incredible.
I think he's got, don't quote me, I'm pretty sure he's already 300 home run mark.
He did. He hit that.
Yeah, he's still young, like you said.
He's 31.
Yeah, like he could potentially play 10, maybe 12 more years. Obviously, there's going to be some fall off on the back half of that, but when you're that kind of player, a fall off, a lot of other players would take that fall off. They'd be in the league longer. But so, when all is said and done with him, I think people are going to be really surprised when they look at all those stats and like, is he the best ever to do it? I know some people, baseball is America's pastime and it was invented here, and arguably, right, the greatest player in baseball has always been someone from the States in America, but there might be a time here when Ohtani's done, he's arguably the greatest player of all time, and he's not from America. It doesn't bother me at all, but I'm sure there's some old, men on the porch that might not like that as much as some others, but listen, he's doing he's fun to watch. I'm a Mets fan and I still enjoy, except when it's against the Mets.
And you're already seeing his cards in the Babe Ruth category in terms of value. Maybe he's becomes Mantle someday. You never know.
Even as unlicensed stuff.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
All right, we're seeing another trend going on here in the hobby. And we're seeing, the franchising of LCSs. Tom Brady's card vault comes to mind. I know Nash Cards has got 5 stores and expanding. Replay Sports Cards, I think, is in double digits across the nation. I've heard a rumor that there's going to be another celebrity launching. I can't say who. I promise not to say. But there's going to be another celebrity launching their own franchise of card stores. As a former LCS owner myself in the 90s, I love card stores, right? Just the same reason like we love shows, right? Nothing beats an in-person transaction. Sure, you order something on eBay at 3 in the morning, but to see or hold an item before purchasing in it, right? You can't replace that anywhere. So I'm a fan of LCSs. I think they're an important lifeblood of the hobby. But when I hear about all these franchises and multiple just opening up all these locations, I just worry about the oversaturation of them. It's like any business. You know, I guess it works for Dunkin' Donuts. It seems like there's one of those on every block. You walk one block, there's another one. I don't know how that's going to look in the hobby space if we have potentially too many stores. And then you feel, I think about what about, you know, like you hear like the Walmart effect, like all the mom and pop stores going out of business. So I think with all these franchisee LCSs, what about that, you know, smaller card store, the one, you know, where one guy owns one store, let's say, or one person owns one store, and to compete against these, you know, big money stores that have a lot of investment behind it and backing behind it. So, you know, I'll stop talking and see, you know, I'll let you guys weigh in. Is it good, bad, maybe even both?
Yeah, I think there's both sides to it. I do feel sorry a little bit for the smaller card shops, the mom and pops that are going out of business or not doing what they did before because of some of these big ones. But you also look at it that the modern card shop is really sort of revolutionizing things too. Some of these shops now are like walking in an Apple store. You know, you can walk right up and scan the card and find out everything about it. You can go into a card shop now and break your own product on your own YouTube channel. Do all of these interactive things, I think, that are attracting more, you know, more of the modern collector and more kids. So I think that's a big benefit of it. And then you attach a name like Tom Brady to it. There's some novelty there. There's going to be, you know, you want to go to see what's in Tom Brady's store. So I think it's going to help the overall exposure and publicity of the hobby to have guys like that. But there's a downside too, and for older collectors who are used to going to their mom and pop stores, that's a little bit depressing now. But it's definitely changed the whole card shop dynamic. I look at some of this, you know, for instance, Jeff Wilson's HQ cards. I've been in his card shop in Atlanta, and it's spectacular. He's got video booths all the way around the place where they're doing videos and interacting with customers and stuff. And then I walked by his booth yesterday, and he's almost got a card shop set up out here. And he's got dozens of people, you know, selling, buying, doing what they do. And so you're just seeing a real evolution, I think, of the card shop now, that it's more than just a store. You know, you got the digital side, you got the personal side, and then, you know, they're doing the entertainment content creation as well.
It's an
That's
experience.
a big thing. Everybody's got to have, you know, if you're running a card shop these days, you got to have some content creation, you got to have some breaking, you got to have all these things for different facets of the hobby. So I think it's going through a big growth phase right now.
I generally think having more stores is good because pre-pandemic, I'm in New York City and there were like maybe 3 or 4 card shops in all of New York City. That's really nothing. Now, there's probably 3 times that, but I noticed the old mom and pop ones are more the stores I remember growing up where you could go in there and buy dollar cards. The newer stores are more like museums where they have very high-end cards and high-end products, and it's not for everybody. So I think they cater to different audiences. It's a matter of figuring out over time, between the rent and everything else, can these newer stores survive this high-end market? Will there be enough of those people? It seems there is. It's enough to go around, but as you know, in cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, the rent is extremely high for shops. So it's a matter of figuring out, long-term strategy. Can it work, or is franchising it growing too fast? And then when there's a bit of a recession, they have to close. We'll see. I think it's a wait-and-see approach, but I generally think having more stores is good because, like you said, nothing beats an in-person transaction. Look at how many people are here, right? So clearly there's a desire, a thirst for that. I know eBay's a huge business, but having said that, I'd rather go to a store and buy something than online.
If a collector's looking for a deal, they're probably not going to the big franchise store, right? You're going to your mom and pop and everything. You still have, like you said, they have the big cards. They're paying the hefty bills across from Wrigley Field with their locations and everything else.
There are no dollar boxes.
Probably not.
Yeah.
They're $10 boxes there.
maybe more.
Something you touched on earlier, Jeff, right? It sort of segues with these, the influx of all these card stores and card store franchisees. We're seeing a lot of more celebrities, active in the hobby, from athletes to actors and actresses, and you got too many to name, like Jason Sudeikis recently, at the Fanatics Fest, which we're going to talk a little bit about here later on, and I think Emma Thompson doing breaks, we're just seeing a lot of celebrity influx, which it doesn't bother me if they're really collectors. I think that's awesome. I guess my fear, I don't want to say fear, but like if it's all for show, I'm not a big fan of that, but if it's really like, they have a passion for it and they love it, with their families or kids, I'm all for it. It makes this hobby bigger, right? So it's interesting to see, and then I always, when I see it, I'm like, is it like, how big of a collector are they? Is it real? But it's bringing more attention to the hobby. We've all heard the Rubin 10X, and a lot of that I think is his influence as well, knowing all these folks, and now heading up the company that owns 3/4 of the 4 major sports licensing. So I think this all it's all connected, and we're seeing, like you said, Kevin, and he's a celebrity. Kevin O'Leary spending millions of dollars on cards, and I think his circle of friends are starting to he started a company with some partners to buy these rare cards. So we're seeing this celebrity influx. I think it's good if it's genuine. I think it can be bad if that turns out to not be genuine. I just, if you guys want to give your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think, that's the impact of Fanatics, I mean, they had 400 or 500 athletes and celebrities at Fanatics Fest.
Yes.
And I think that's great. And, you hope a lot of these guys are genuine. I'm sure some of it's for show, but we are seeing a lot of athletes that are very into it. The pitcher with the Card Life show, Matt Strom. He's really into it. We've seen other guys, Brady with his stores. I thought it was really neat to see Karl Anthony Towns buying cards at Fanatics Fest, and so I do think there's some genuine interest there. There's some, but I think when you've got big name celebrities like that, that's going to get people's attention, and it's going to bring more collectors into the hobby, particularly kids, particularly new collectors, and I think that's what's going to keep the hobby healthy and growing for many, many years.
I think it's cool to see Bobby Witt Jr. doing it, a big name, a guy who people can look up to. I heard a really cool story from a shop owner in Kansas City where a couple years ago, I think I told you that, that there was a rain delay during a Royals game, and he got an Uber and went to his local LCS and picked up a box. They ripped it in the clubhouse during the rain delay. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about the passion that he has in this hobby, and that's what they need.
I also think it's not unusual for athletes to collect, and maybe they always did, but because of social media, if someone's making a transaction, it's being recorded. Or if someone buys a card, they put it on Instagram. 25 years ago, if an athlete bought a card, you wouldn't know about it. So there's definitely, but I also agree with you that there are celebrities and athletes who have deals with Fanatics or brand ambassadors, and so the motivation behind it may be financial, we never know, but I think even if that's the case, it still helps propel the hobby in a public place where it's not just a thing that kids are doing, that kids did 30 years ago. I mean, whenever I tell people that I write about sports cards or collectibles, they're like, are people still doing that? And I'm like, it's actually a very big part of the market, and people just are unaware of it. And I do think the last couple of years, they become more aware of it because it's on the news, it's in their feed, it's being talked about in a way that is more mainstream. And that always happens sometimes, or a big card sells and like at auction, and it makes like the morning shows, that my wife watches. And she's like, oh look, they're talking about baseball cards, like as if it's very niche, and it is, but I think it's more mainstream. And I think if actors and athletes can do that, that's good for everybody. It's good for the hobby in general.
I think one of the biggest impacts that Fanatics has had on the whole hobby is that they've made it cool to be a card collector again.
Yeah, I remember a time, Jeff, like if you said I collect cards, people looked at you funny, right? Now, like, you say that, I'm like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So
now you're weird if you don't collect.
Yeah, it's the opposite. So that part's kind of funny, and I like that, but long as it's legit and not, scripted, or hey, here's $10,000, go around the show floor and look like you're buying some cards.
Right.
I hope that's not the case, and it probably most of the time it's not, which is good. But yeah, it's changed the perception of the hobby. Like it wasn't cool. Like, oh, you collect cards, right? That's one of the main reasons you hear the stories. Like, oh, I graduated high school, went to college, and
I stopped
my
collecting.
car, it wasn't cool, right? So now, kids are going off to college and they're bringing their cards with them.
Yeah.
Into their dorm rooms or wherever they're living and residing. So it's just different. The hobby in 2026 is different. Like I started in 1979, and it's not even close. It's a completely different hobby, just from the technology aspect alone. So it's interesting to see, and it's not just athletes, right? It's even celebrities and movie stars and corporate people, and it's become an asset. It's an asset class now. People are not only investing in stocks and bonds and real estate. Kevin O'Leary's investing probably in that stuff too, but also cards now, and people follow those trends. So we're going to see more people get in, not less.
Right.
Well, Greg mentioned Jordan and Gretzky and these big names, these legendary names, Brady. Their value only goes up, and it will stay up because they're not going to get injured. They're not going to do anything that's going to hurt their careers. So, yeah, people are investing in that, and I use that word cautiously. But having said that, people are, I think, and it's also something you can show off. I know people, for example, that like coins or collect watches. There's only so many things people can collect that's tangible. You can buy all the stocks you want, but you can't really look at them. If you buy a signed Jordan basketball, you can put that in your living room, or you can put it on social media, right? So I think there's something to that too. The hobby flex is a big part of it as well. So.
Yeah, guys are wearing cards around their neck to like entering the ring to fight, or just walking around the show or whatnot. You did that like 20 years ago, you'd be laughed at. Or look at this guy.
Yeah, it would be weird.
Now it's like no big deal. No one even bats an eye. It's just how it's changed, and even just the perspective of people. It's cool to collect cards, which I always knew that. So a lot of people are late to the party.
They're just catching up to your coolness.
So, Clemente, you just were at, we talked about Fanatics Fest. Speaking of celebrities, there was no shortage of them there, doing panels like this, but also walking through the crowd and like we said, buying some cards from dealers there. A lot of people like to, compare that show, that event to the National here. My opinion, you're dealing with two separate entities. Sure, there's similarities. Sure, there are dealer tables at Fanatics Fest. We've talked before. Like, that's more like Comic-Con for sports than where this is more of I call this the Super Bowl of the hobby. This is the card show. Like, nothing against Fanatics Fest. I've never been, so I'm not talking from experience. But if I could only go to one, this is going to be the one for me. But I'll start with Clemente as someone who was live on the floor. Like, do you agree with that assessment, or what did you take from it? And you've been to Nationals obviously before too.
No, I agree that both can coexist because it's a very big world and there's room for everybody. That is the Comic-Con of sports, meaning that maybe 30% of that show is collectibles and cards, and 70% is people who want to dress up, they want to experience something, they want to go to a panel, they want to meet celebrities, they want to get autographs. So it's a lot going on there. People are not coming here for the experience. It's part of it, but 99% of people here are probably buying sports cards and collectibles, right? And the 1% got dragged here maybe. But at Fanatics Fest, it's very different. It's segmented into very different groups of people doing many different things in the same space. So it's very different. I mean, the card part of it is 250 dealers, which is a fraction of what you see here. And that collectibles component is there, but it's really not just a Comic-Con for sports, but it's also just a salute to Fanatics, because you have the Fanatics collectibles booth, you have the Fanatics gambling area, you have this bar area, you have the autograph pavilion, you have many different Fanatics assets that are dominant there. And that's just it's really a salute to Michael Rubin and to Fanatics and to this empire that's growing that involves collectibles. It's a small part of that larger group. Here, it's all about collectibles, and some of the people you see here you would never see there, like Leaf or Panini or others. If you go to the Topps booth here, it's almost identical to the one at Fanatics Fest, right? So they've already done this 10 days ago. They're just doing it again here. So it's interesting, and I think there's room for everyone. There's a very small Venn diagram. I think in the future, Fanatics Fest will be better served by being in June or a different time of year, because it does butt up close to this show. And with the World Cup, they moved it to July and everything, but with a 10-day gap, I may be one of a very small group of people that's been to both. I don't know anybody else who's been to both. I haven't met anybody else. If there are people that have been to both, I'd love to talk to you, because people don't travel to Fanatics Fest. It's really a New York show, maybe Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, but drivable. But no one's flying from California to go to Fanatics Fest. People coming from all over the world to be here. So it's different. They both can coexist. They're not in competition with one another. It's two very different shows. But it's an interesting phenomenon. I think more shows the better. We have these big regional shows now as well. So there seems to be no shortage of shows, and more people go to them. So it's definitely not hurting in terms of foot traffic. But Fanatics Fest is an experience. People should at least go once, because it is very, as you can see in the coverage I wrote for SCD, there's a lot of things happening at the same time, and you can't be everywhere at once. It's a little chaotic, but I enjoy it, and I bring my 17-year-old daughter with me just because I need someone else to be there to tell me I'm not crazy, because it's loud, it's crazy, it's crowded. And this show is those things as well, but it's not as loud because it's not, the whatnot area, that's Fanatics Fest all the time. Here you get pieces of that spread out. So.
Yeah, I think there's a place for both. I think they're both very valuable to the hobby. It is a little bit of a different crowd. I mean, people here are more into cards. They're shopping for cards. They're trading cards. And I think there it's more about, being seen and seeing who you can see. One interesting aspect of it to me, I love going to the autograph pavilion here. I love to see the old legends meeting fans and signing autographs. But when you come here, they've got probably 160 athletes or so, most of them Hall of Famers. I think there's over 60 baseball Hall of Famers this year. You go to Fanatics Fest, it's all modern guys. It's LeBron, it's Durant, it's Brady. It's the biggest names in sports, but the audiences are different too. You come here to get your autographs from Johnny Bench and Reggie Jackson. You go there to get a selfie with LeBron and Kevin Durant. It's just two totally different worlds, but I think they're both doing the same thing. They're raising the profile and the exposure of the hobby, and you're serving a little bit different audiences, but I think they can coexist, and I think they're both very important. And I also think that we're going to see more big shows emerge. You've got companies now that are having, we have the Dallas Card Show, and they're branching out all over the country now. You've got Front Row Card. They're doing 600-700 table shows all across the country. So I think the National and the Fanatics Fest are raising the profile of the show experience, and it's causing other promoters to look at it and say, we need to branch out and have big shows all over the country. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more shows that some of us and some of the same people may start going to big shows. Instead of once or twice a year, you might start going 3 or 4 times a year because there's going to be more opportunities.
You're going to have a big show every month. It's
Could.
crazy. Yeah. But like you said, Clemente, timing is huge. Like you can't have, it fits to have Fanatics Fest and the National, but to be, like you said, 10 days apart is tough.
Yeah.
Because somebody's going to pick and choose. I mean, if Fanatics Fest is 2 months before this, yeah, you're going to get a lot more people who are going to be able to do both. Or dealers or corporate or whatever else. But it seems like, yeah, they're picking and choosing budget-wise, time-wise, everything.
Yeah, you made a great point, Greg, with the 10 days apart, right? I'd like to see, I don't know if they can work together, but try to avoid that close between 2 huge events such as the National and Fanatics Fest, right? And I've even heard maybe there'll be 2 Fanatics Fest a year potentially.
Well, we forget the original intent was to have a Fanatics Fest that traveled around the country, and then that idea was pretty much because given the cost, if you want to replicate the New York show in 12 American cities, they'd go bankrupt. I mean, you can never do that, right? So they've kind of pared down to we're going to do one show.
Yeah, I read that the Fanatics Fest cost $90 million to pull off. When you think about that, and if you're going to do it multiple times, that's probably going to be in the same ballpark. Even for Fanatics, that's a good chunk of change. So.
But I think it's a good investment in terms of advertising, because if you click on one piece of content, your entire Instagram feed for months will be about Fanatics Fest. I'm still getting video in my Instagram feed. So, and what people are doing, and it gets people excited about going to it. So it's very smart. It creates FOMO when this show's only 3 years old. It's basically a baby compared to this show. But it's created enough enthusiasm where people are I know this year, for example, in year 3, they were people I knew who had never heard of it were oh, I definitely want to go this year. Maybe because of the World Cup, maybe because of the Knicks. That added a big component in New York. The Knicks were going to be there. The trophy was there. People got to touch the trophy. You're not going to get that experience here, but those people might not be collectors either. They might just be, I noticed something really interesting among younger people. They're more interested in getting a selfie with a celebrity and putting it on Instagram than getting an autograph. I still want an autograph. My daughter wants the selfie because that raises her social media profile.
Yeah.
Right? I want it because I want to put it in my collection. So very different competing agendas going on there, that's all.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch here, guys. We kind of wrap it up with the future of the hobby, right? Where do we see, and a lot of the topics we talked about sort of play into that as well with the increase of stores, the increase of shows. We're already seeing more shows. We're seeing more shows in cities that never even had shows before. And like you said, Greg, we're seeing these big shows every month. You know, I'm gonna have to ask my mom to raise my allowance with all these shows. But like the future hobby, I think, you know, going back to Ruben's 10X comment, right, which is great. If those 10X, right, all those new people coming in the hobby are here for the long haul like me that started in 1979. I'd love to share my hobby with everyone, but I want them to stay, right? I don't want them to come in for 2 years and then exit stage left. That's not necessarily hobby healthy. So if it's general, you know, people coming in the hobby to do things, you know, above board in the right way, and it's, I'm all for it. And I think, listen, you can't be in this building right now and not think the hobby's in a good, strong place. But, you know, I want it to stay that way. So that's sort of my, you know, soapbox rant on that.
Yeah, I think we're in another boom era right now. You know, it boomed during the pandemic, and we had this huge uptick. And then we had a little bit of a lull after that, and I think a lot of people expected it to go back to the pre-pandemic era, and it hasn't. It's taken off again, and I feel like it's going to an even another level now. And again, you know, like you said, you just go walk out on that show floor, and you can see and you can feel how much bigger it is just from 2 years ago. I mean, this place is way bigger than it was just 2 or 3 years ago.
And we're on the second floor.
We're on the second floor, right.
That one didn't happen before.
Exactly.
They did it a little bit last year, and they expanded it this year.
Right. I mean,
Well, it feels like the Wednesday crowd is like a Saturday.
yeah. So I think it's going to continue to grow. I think Fanatics has a huge responsibility to protect this, to make sure they do the right things, so it continues to grow. I think bringing all these kids in is huge. I think that's the future, but I think they've also got to get some of the prices under control. You don't want to start running people off because they can't afford it anymore. I think that's a big risk and a danger right now. I think they got to protect that. Make sure that there are cards available for your average collector and kids to be able to afford. I think if they do that, I think we got a bright future.
It'll be interesting to see where we're at next year if there's a strike, a baseball strike. How's that going to affect the national and prices and baseball and everything?
I hope it brings them down so I can buy more cards. Well, all right, folks, that's our time for today. Thank you, everyone out there in the audience listening, and enjoy the show.